Imagine a metropolis the size of New York City, populated entirely by children, and suddenly, every single one of them vanishes. This isn't a hypothetical. Over the last few years, nearly 9 million students have permanently left the American public school system as their parents vote with their feet. Before we investigate where they went, let's take a quick second to thank our sponsor, Shasta Unfiltered, for bringing you this episode of The Explainer. Shasta Unfiltered serves the North State with honest news and entertainment. They dive deep into local stories, politics, and the cultural shifts impacting California families. Hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and scan the code or visit the link below to support independent journalism. These 9 million missing children represent a permanent migration. This shift is actively breaking the historical mold of American education. Look at a traditional classroom like this one from the 1960s. Back then, homeschooling was a niche practice involving maybe 10,000 kids nationwide. Even by 2019, alternative schooling only accounted for roughly 3% of the student population. Then came the COVID-19 pandemic. In a matter of weeks, emergency lockdowns forced global school closures and replaced traditional attendance with mandatory remote learning protocols. As children logged onto laptops from their kitchen tables, millions of parents were given a front-row seat to modern classroom instruction. They saw exactly what their kids were and weren't learning. Alternative schooling predictably spiked during the lockdowns, but when the doors finally reopened, millions of families chose to stay away. A temporary public health measure effectively ended the decades-long assumption that the public system was the only viable path for the average family. To understand exactly what ended that assumption, we have to look at the latest data from the Department of Education. When you ask these migrating parents why they left, the answers fall into stark, predictable categories. The primary driver has nothing to do with academics. The top reason parents cite for leaving these hallways is concern for the physical school environment, specifically fears regarding safety, persistent bullying, and exposure to drugs. This chart tracks the National Assessment of Educational Progress, often called the nation's report card. It shows a sharp downward trend, with standardized test scores in reading and math plunging below pre-pandemic levels, fueling deep parental dissatisfaction. Beyond academics and safety, there is intense cultural friction. A growing coalition of parents feel that core academic fundamentals are being sidelined to make room for social-emotional learning and diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Parents across the political spectrum are fleeing because they perceive the public system as structurally unable to provide the safety, moral alignment, and basic academic rigor they demand for their children. Where did they go? First, the home. 3.4 million children are homeschooled, an aggressive rate tripling the pre-pandemic average. Private schools capture 5 million more, stacking up to nearly 9 million kids exiting the public system. While percentages show the intensity of the trend, looking at the raw volume of these numbers reveals exactly where the largest societal shifts are hitting the hardest. Looking at this math, specific regional powerhouses are driving the trend. California alone leads the nation with over 547,000 homeschoolers, followed closely by massive populations in Texas, North Carolina, and Florida. These massive figures prove that homeschooling and private education have officially shed their fringe status. They are permanent, mainstream fixtures of American society. But while millions of families have permanently migrated, the financial architecture of American education is severely lagging behind the reality on the ground. These opt-out families are trapped by what is essentially a double pay penalty. They still pay their full share of local, state, and federal taxes to fund public schools, while simultaneously shouldering 100% of the out-of-pocket costs for their private choices. To fix this penalty, policymakers are looking at neutral financial mechanisms like school vouchers, education savings accounts, and targeted tax credits. The core philosophy is simple. Public funding should follow the individual child's needs, rather than automatically funding the state institution. With 9 million students now outside the system, Washington faces a demographic too large to ignore. Addressing the financial barriers for these families is the next step in ensuring educational choice is accessible to everyone, not just those who can afford to pay twice. We want to hear your thoughts on this. Let us know your take in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and visit ShastaUnfiltered.com for more deep dives.